The man who faithfully kept a daily journal of his life with Barbra Streisand now faces the most difficult entries yet. James Brolin, who famously proposed 3 times before she accepted, recently told producers he can't commit to new work, for now. Their separate bank accounts are finally being merged as medical expenses climb. After celebrating their 25th anniversary last year, the couple is confronting their greatest challenge. Hollywood insiders reveal that Brolin even turned down a $2 million role just to remain at home. This next chapter may be the most heartbreaking of his life. James Brolin entered the world as Craig Kenneth Bruderlin on July 18, 1940, during a blistering Los Angeles heat wave. The temperature hit 103 degrees the day he was born. His father, Henry, a prosperous contractor, barely reached the hospital in time, arriving only 12 minutes before Craig was delivered. Henry ran his household with military precision. From the age of 4, Craig was assigned daily chores and received weekly evaluations of his behavior. His mother, Helen, had once been a film extra but kept that fact from him, determined he remain focused on school. Craig was a reserved child, partly due to chronic asthma. At 7, he spent 45 days in the hospital. Still, he displayed a quick intellect. By 9, he had dismantled and reassembled his father's watch. Teachers admired his mechanical skills, yet no one foresaw his growing obsession with James Dean. At 15, Craig saw East of Eden, a moment that changed his life. For 6 straight months, he secretly rode his bicycle 17 miles every Saturday to Griffith Park, practicing Dean's walk, speech, and mannerisms in solitude. In his room, he hid 73 James Dean clippings behind a poster. He saved over $200 from his paper route and purchased an 8mm camera, creating 24 silent reenactments with neighborhood children. When Dean died in a car crash, Craig was so devastated he didn't speak for 11 days. One of Craig's short films caught the attention of his drama teacher, who sent it to UCLA without telling him. It won an honorable mention from Nicholas Ray, the very director of Rebel Without a Cause. That moment cemented Craig's dream of becoming an actor, even though his extreme shyness caused him to vomit before auditions. In 1960, the studio urged him to change his name, insisting Bruderlin sounded too German. They cited statistics claiming short, hard-sounding names had more impact. Craig resisted through 7 meetings, but eventually the studio prevailed, choosing James in tribute to his idol, James Dean. His father didn't speak to him for over a year. His mother sent the new headshots to relatives, trying to ease the transition. For 214 nights, James relied on sleeping pills. After all that, the studio criticized him for imitating Dean too closely, the very quality they had originally wanted. In 1966, Brolin landed minor parts on the Batman TV series. His first appearance as a bank teller impressed the director enough to expand his screen time. Later, another director cast him as the Eraser, unaware he had already been on the show. He even cracked 3 ribs performing his own stunts. Adam West later picked him for a 3rd role, and again, no one realized he had been cast twice before. At the time, Brolin was homeless, living in a 1958 Chevy and showering at the Fox Studios gym. By 1967, his career hit bottom. He starred in The Cape Town Affair, a project he warned would flop due to its weak script and cultural insensitivity. His concerns went ignored, and when the film bombed, he was fired while visiting his mother in the hospital. Adding insult to injury, Fox demanded he return $11,400 in salary. For 18 months, he was jobless, surviving by working as a mechanic, in Van Nuys for clients who had no idea he'd once been a rising actor. Fate intervened when a Universal executive brought in his car for repairs and was impressed by Brolin's work ethic. He offered him a screen test that led to the role of Dr. Stephen Kiley on Marcus Welby, M.D. The series debuted in 1969 and ran until 1976. Brolin portrayed a young motorcycle-riding doctor partnered with an older physician. The show became a massive hit. In 1970, he won an Emmy, followed by 2 Golden Globes. By the second season, it was ABC's top-rated program, addressing serious medical issues such as cancer, depression, and Alzheimer's. One episode dealing with homosexuality sparked protests, but Brolin remained committed to telling meaningful stories. In 1972, he took a darker turn in Skyjacked, portraying a troubled Vietnam veteran who hijacks a plane opposite Charlton Heston. Critics praised his unsettling yet believable performance. The following year, he starred in Westworld as John Blaine, a confident guest at a futuristic amusement park where lifelike robots entertain visitors. The film broke ground with early digital effects. Brolin's character was killed halfway through, shocking audiences and heightening the film's intensity. His role added a vital human element to the story. By 1979, Brolin had ventured into horror, taking the role of George Lutz in the Amityville Horror. Initially skeptical, he changed his mind after a chilling experience while reading the script. His pants mysteriously fell off a chair on their own. He took it as a sign, and the film went on to become a major box office success, earning over $80 million. Brolin's portrayal of a man slowly unraveling was chilling, capturing the fears of financial collapse and family strain that many people felt in the late 1970s. Behind the scenes, he and co-star Margot Kidder clashed, but that tension ended up serving the story well. In 1985, Brolin revealed his comedic side with a cameo in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, playing a suave, secret agent version of Pee-wee, a clever nod to his near casting as James Bond. At the same time, he took on the role of Peter McDermott in the TV drama Hotel, which ran for 5 years and provided him with career stability. As the polished manager of a luxurious San Francisco hotel, Brolin anchored weekly episodes full of fresh drama and new guests. He even directed some episodes and earned 2 Golden Globe nominations during the series. It was also during this time that he met his future wife, Jan Smithers, who guest-starred while he was navigating a difficult divorce. Barbra Streisand, meanwhile, was born in Brooklyn on April 24, 1942, to Diana, a school secretary, and Emmanuel, a respected teacher who earned $4,200 a year, barely enough to support the family in their modest apartment. When Barbara was just 15 months old, her father died from a seizure, leaving only $250 in savings and forcing the family to move in with her grandparents. She never knew her father, but later discovered a note he had written in her baby book. I have a feeling this one is going to be special. In 1949, her mother remarried, giving her a half-sister, but her new stepfather was cold and once told her he intended to break her spirit. At just 16, in 1958, Barbara left home with no money and nowhere to go. For the next year and a half, she slept wherever she could, on friends' couches, in old cots, and even on fire escapes during summer. Her possessions fit into a single suitcase held together with tape, 3 outfits, 2 pairs of shoes, and 12 records. Despite her circumstances, she maintained perfect school attendance, studied in libraries and diners, and worked part-time for 75 cents an hour, making $17 a week stretch by visiting her mother twice weekly for dinner without admitting she was homeless. She wore the same coat for 3 years, repairing and dyeing it herself with leftover costume materials. By 1960, she was working as a theater usher, earning just over $46 a week. She saw The Sound of Music more than 100 times, memorizing every scene, and practiced singing alone in the theater before her shift. One evening, a stage manager overheard her and, assuming she was an understudy, asked her to audition on the spot. She sang for 3 nearby casting directors, and 2 days later was performing in a nightclub for $18 a weekend, double her usher pay, though the theater soon fired her for breaking the rules. It didn't matter. She had taken her first real step into show business without ever having had a formal voice lesson, teaching herself instead by singing in stairwells and subways to test echoes and draw small crowds. Later that year, she stayed with friend Barry Denon in a tiny, overheated apartment, where he persuaded her to record 3 songs. Using an old reel-to-reel recorder, she had to stand exactly 27 inches from the mic. When they played back the tape, Barry was so shocked by her voice that he dropped his coffee mug. He played it for 14 industry professionals. Some refused to believe it was untrained and insisted it must have been professionally engineered. The truth emerged, and that raw recording later found its way into the Library of Congress. Her breakthrough came in September 1960. At just 18, she walked onto a nightclub stage in a $6 thrift store dress and mismatched earrings, having already faced rejection from 7 auditions that month for being too strange-looking. One producer had even told her she had a $1 million voice but a 5-cent face. That night, she sang Cry Me a River and followed it with a comedic Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf. The audience went silent, then applauded for nearly 5 minutes, and she received perfect scores from the judges, the first time in the club's history. A critic even predicted her nose might become as iconic as her voice. Within 2 months, she had 23 paying gigs, proving that true talent didn't need to conform to traditional beauty standards. In 1961, she made a bold move, changing her name by dropping the second A to become Barbara, a way to stand out. She refused to alter her Brooklyn accent, declined cosmetic surgery, and stuck to performing the unconventional songs she loved. Even when only 7 people showed up on a freezing night, she performed as though the venue was packed. Her authenticity paid off. Broadway followed in 1962 when she was cast as Miss Marmalstein in I Can Get It For You Wholesale. Despite having a 103-degree fever the day before her audition, she showed up and fought to keep her big scene from being cut for being too weird. On opening night, the audience demanded she repeat it 3 times. Although a supporting player, she was the one critics raved about, with newspapers calling her the funniest thing on Broadway since Fanny Brice. Starting at $175 a week, her contract was renegotiated 5 times. In 1963, she released her debut album with Columbia Records, which initially printed only 10,000 copies. They assumed it would fail. There were no hit singles, just show tunes and ballads, yet it sold 150,000 copies in a single month. She had complete creative authority, selecting each song herself and even rejecting a color album cover in favor of a stark, black-and-white photograph. It defied all conventional marketing wisdom, but that gamble paid off. The album earned her a Grammy for Album of the Year, beating Frank Sinatra. The result rattled the industry so much that some Grammy voters resigned. In her brief acceptance speech, she declared, "This isn't luck. This is what happens when you don't listen to people who don't understand your vision." A year later, she took on the role of Fanny Brice in Funny Girl. Brice's own daughter objected, claiming Barbara was too Brooklyn, too Jewish, and not pretty enough. When word spread that she had been cast, investors pulled out over $1 million. Still, Barbara triumphed, delivering 867 performances and missing only 2 shows, even while battling pneumonia. She sang songs composed specifically for her, showcasing her 3.5-octave vocal range. In one performance, a sprinkler malfunctioned and drenched her mid-scene, but she sang on. The director loved the moment so much, he made it part of the show. When the production moved to London, early reviews were scathing, yet ticket demand soared until black market prices reached $150, a staggering figure for the time. By 1965, her ambitions had expanded. She signed a $5 million contract with CBS for 10 television specials, an extraordinary deal for a 23-year-old that guaranteed her full creative control. CBS could not alter her work or cut to commercials during her songs without her approval. Her debut special, My Name is Barbara, shattered television norms, opening with her singing alone in total darkness to the horror of executives. But it captivated audiences. 71% of Americans watching TV that night tuned in. She won 5 Emmy Awards for it and personally edited the entire program. The show's director later admitted his role was simply to follow her lead. In 1968, Streisand made her film debut, reprising Fanny Brice in Funny Girl. The movie became the highest-grossing U.S. film of the year, and her performance earned her an Academy Award for Best Actress. Even more remarkable, she tied with Katharine Hepburn, the only tie in that category's history. The film garnered 8 Oscar nominations and cemented her status as both a stage and screen star. Decades later, the Library of Congress named it a national treasure. Streisand was not content to stay in one lane. In 1972, she took a risk on the screwball comedy What's Up, Doc? With Ryan O'Neal. Initially, she disliked the script and predicted its failure. But revisions flipped the dynamic, making her character lighthearted while O'Neal played the straight man. The changes worked. The film became the year's third highest-grossing movie. She earned $500,000, more than her co-star, and critical praise for her comedic talent. The movie remains a staple on lists of America's greatest comedies. The following year, she starred opposite Robert Redford in The Way We Were, a romance between a politically driven Jewish activist and a charming writer. Made for just $5 million, it grossed $50 million. Streisand's performance earned another Oscar nomination and won her a major Italian Film Prize. The title song, sung by her, became 1974's biggest hit, selling over 2 million copies and later joining the Grammy Hall of Fame. Determined to control her projects, Streisand founded Barwood Films in 1972. Her first production, Up the Sandbox, was an unconventional, feminist-leaning story of a bored housewife retreating into fantasy. It flopped commercially but earned critical respect for its boldness, with reviewers likening her screen presence to icons like Greta Garbo. Roger Ebert praised her portrayal of a woman utterly unconcerned with societal expectations, a rarity in films of the era. In 1976, she both starred in and produced A Star is Born. Its love theme, Evergreen, co-written by Streisand, became a global hit. She made history as the first woman to win an Oscar for composing music. The song also earned her a Grammy and a Golden Globe, while her acting performance won her another Golden Globe. Evergreen remains one of her most celebrated works. Her insistence on creative authority reached new heights with her directorial debut, Yentl, 1983. It took 15 years to bring to life, rejected by 12 studios before one finally approved a $14.5 million budget. She endured grueling 20-hour days, disguised herself in tight bindings for the role, and commanded a mostly male crew of 168, some of whom bet against her. The film grossed over $40 million, silencing skeptics, yet discrimination persisted. One Academy voter admitted refusing to support her simply because she was a woman. At the time, only 0.5% of major studio films were directed by women. When Yentl received glowing reviews in 1984, the Golden Globes sidestepped her for Best Director, creating instead a one-time Best Director in a musical or comedy category, which she won. The following year, the category vanished. At the ceremony, she asked, politely but pointedly, why she hadn't simply been considered alongside the others. The incident became so widely known that Congress later cited it as evidence of gender bias in Hollywood. Through it all, Streisand never backed down. In 1991, she returned to directing with The Prince of Tides, a project that took 26 drafts and 3 years to finalize. She shot the film in hurricane-ravaged South Carolina, hiring dozens of displaced locals to be part of the crew. The film grossed $63 million and earned 7 Oscar nominations. The Directors Guild made history by naming her the first woman ever nominated in its 44-year existence. Still, the Academy refused to nominate her for Best Director, sparking outrage when it was revealed that 94% of the Directors Branch voters were men. In 1995, Barbara broke more ground by directing her own HBO concert special and winning the Directors Guild Award for Television Directing, the first woman to win in that category. The production was massive, with 11 cameras, 125 crew members, and 223 separate camera setups. This triumph came despite her ongoing struggle with crippling stage fright, rooted in a 1967 concert where she forgot the lyrics. That fear had kept her away from live performances for 27 years. The special drew 26 million viewers, earned $93 million, and gave her a platform to point out that only 3.7% of TV directing jobs went to women, a battle she had been fighting, with the DGA for a quarter century. Behind the scenes, her personal life was often turbulent. She married actor Elliot Gould in 1963, and their son, Jason, was born in 1966. Barbara canceled a $1 million tour when she learned she was pregnant. She adored being a mother and often took Jason to work, but the marriage deteriorated. Gould's gambling and drug issues drained their resources, and Barbara worried about Jason's well-being. They separated in 1969 and divorced in 1971. On July 1, 1996, Barbara met James Brolin on a blind date arranged by friend Linda Bruckheimer. Both were in their mid-50s and had endured failed relationships. Streisand had been single since 1971, while Brolin had just ended his second marriage and was $144 million in debt. The meeting almost never happened. Brolin was supposed to meet someone else that night, but changed his mind at the last minute, taking a Valium to calm his nerves. Streisand expected a rugged, bearded man, but found him clean-shaven for a role. They talked for 6 hours, discovering they'd been born just 344 miles apart in Los Angeles. Within 30 seconds, Streisand quipped, "Who messed up your hair?" A harmless comment that still hit Brolin hard, as his ex-wife hadn't complimented his looks in over a decade. He nearly walked out, but stayed, drawn by something in her eyes. The evening ended at 3:27 a.m., when she asked for a lock of his hair, which she later framed alongside a handwritten note. 17 minutes after meeting him, she felt he was unlike any of the 28 blind dates she'd had in the past 3 years. Brolin's first proposal came just 87 days later in a hot air balloon over Napa Valley, offering a 3.9-carat diamond worth $250,000. She refused, citing a strict 2-year rule after a past engagement ended badly. He tried again on New Year's Eve 1997 in New York, playing her favorite childhood song and proposing in front of 14 friends. She said no once more. The third time, on March 15, 1998, during a picnic at her Malibu home, he handed her a 24-page letter listing 98 reasons they belonged together, and this time she accepted. What Brolin didn't know was that when they first met, she had been secretly engaged to another man, ending that relationship after their 5th date. They married exactly 2 years after their first meeting, on July 1, 1998. The $1.4 million wedding took place at her Malibu estate under extraordinary security. 37 guards, a no-fly zone, and NDAs with $250,000 penalties. The ceremony began at 8:47 p.m., the moment they'd first met, and featured 15,000 white roses and orchids flown in from 4 countries. Guests included Tom Hanks, Oprah Winfrey, the Clintons, and Marlon Brando. Streisand wore a gown with a 27-foot train, while Brolin donned an Armani suit with diamond cufflinks. She wrote, "I've finally found you" for the ceremony, performed by a children's choir from her foundation. At the reception, Brolin gave a heartfelt 273-word speech at 11:43 p.m., which Streisand framed. He said, "Every night is a new adventure. Sleeping is a waste of time. I can't wait to see her again in the morning." His decades-long insomnia vanished when they began sharing their lives. By the wedding, they had already spent 642 nights together, reading poetry in bed, solving crossword puzzles, and sharing private stories. That night, he played Barbara's lullaby, misspelled intentionally as a private joke. John Travolta later revealed that Brolin had kept a daily journal of their time together, intending to give it to her on their 25th anniversary, a milestone they reached in 2023. From the outset of their marriage, they practiced bifurcation, keeping separate bank accounts, splitting bills evenly, even for weekly Tuesday dinners. This was Brolin's idea, having lost $3 million in his second divorce. With Streisand worth $400 million and Brolin $60 million, it kept their finances balanced. They maintained just one joint account with $800,000 for household expenses. In 2023, Brolin credited this arrangement with avoiding the financial disputes that wrecked many Hollywood marriages. During the COVID-19 lockdown, their connection only deepened. While other couples drifted apart, they spent 425 consecutive nights together, rising at 6:45 a.m., meditating, and sharing breakfast. They completed 37 jigsaw puzzles, one for each potential year of marriage, rewatched The Crown and Bridgerton, twice, even acting out scenes in costume. Together, they compiled a 278-page journal chronicling the lockdown, which Brolin hinted might one day become a memoir. Their $35,000 Swedish mattress became more than just a bed. It was their headquarters, affectionately dubbed the boardroom. Equipped with special support settings for both of them, it featured spots for documents and pillows that could transform into laptop stands. From that bed, they made major career decisions, and Streisand even wrote songs for her 2018 album while lying there. They spent 4 to 6 hours a day on it, and the bedroom, soundproofed at a cost of $175,000, became a haven for their creativity. Brolin admitted that most of their best ideas emerged from that quiet space. When disagreements arose, they didn't argue aimlessly. They followed a ritualized walking method. No phones, deep breaths every 30 steps, and walking in opposite directions around their 3.2-acre estate. After exactly 17 minutes, they reconvened and wrote journal entries about their feelings. They used this technique at least 217 times. In 2019, during a disagreement about Streisand's book, they took 7 walks over 3 days. Even while traveling, they would request separate walking paths from hotel staff. Brolin credited this routine with calming their minds and helping them solve problems naturally. Beyond her creative work, Streisand remained deeply committed to women's heart health. In 2014, she launched the Fight the Lady Killer campaign, after discovering that heart disease kills more women than all cancers combined. She helped fund a heart center at Cedars-Sinai and worked to raise public awareness. In 2018, she delivered a major lecture at the National Institutes of Health, highlighting how women often receive worse cardiac care than men. Her campaign contributed to a drop in heart disease deaths among women, from 1 in 3 to 1 in 4. At the same time, she devoted 10 years to writing her memoir, My Name is Barbara, released in 2023. The 970-page book, written entirely by hand, had been in her mind since the 1990s. Even Jacqueline Kennedy once encouraged her to write it. Critics praised its honesty and style, and Brolin joked that much of it was likely written in bed on their luxurious mattress. By 2025, Brolin, at 83, was still active and enthusiastic about his work. In an interview with People magazine, he said, "I don't plan on stopping." At the time, he was filming Ransom Canyon and narrating the final season of Sweet Tooth. He quipped that while Streisand made fewer movies, he balanced it out with sheer volume, 97 films and 600 hours of television. What thrilled him most was always the next project. Ransom Canyon brought him back to the Western genre, where he played rancher Cap Fuller, whose death in episode 9 came sooner than he would have liked. The series was notable as Netflix's first major solar-powered production, filmed across 150 miles of New Mexico. Around the same time, Brolin finished narrating all 3 seasons of Sweet Tooth. Reflecting on his long career, he spoke warmly about his history with horses, admitted that directing remained his greatest love, yet said, acting still kept him energized.